In this episode, I will have a great conversation with a guy who has really done it all here in the Santa Clara Valley, Ellie Patterson, owner and winemaker of Mount Eden and Domain Eden Vineyards. We're going to talk to him about a lot of fun topics, including his winery's special connection to the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle wedding, and most importantly, his very special philosophy about grape growing and winemaking. Wine with Bill starts now. Welcome to Wine with Bill, and I'm Bill. Today we have a special guest with us, Ellie Patterson, the guy who does it all and has done it all for decades and decades. He is the owner and winemaker of Mount Eden Vineyard, as well as Domain Eden, situated in the Saratoga Foothill Mountains and in the, most importantly, Santa Cruz Mountains AVA. Ellie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for being here. Well, let's just put it this way and we'll get right into it. Your both wineries, but especially Mount Eden Vineyards, have a pedigree history that goes back and back and back, whether it be Paul Masson, whether it be Martin Ray. Give us a brief history and take us up to the present.
Okay. I don't want to bore you with too much detail, but the real essence of Mount Eden is born with Paul Masson immigrating from Burgundy, France in the 1880s, marrying into the family that owned Almaden, the Charles Lefranc family, and then kind of parlaying that position into buying all the land next door to us, which is now called the Mountain Winery. It was originally called Paul Masson.
Yes.
Paul Masson was from Burgundy, France. In Burgundy, France, the white is a Chardonnay and the red is a Pinot Noir, and that's what he planted predominantly in his vineyard. And he made sparkling wine, of all things. Started his winery in 1900, was very successful, was able to weather Prohibition in the 1920s, early 1930s, and then in the mid-1930s, he eventually gets old, like we all do, unfortunately.
We progress, yes.
And he sells it to this middle-aged man whom he knew as a child, Martin Ray. Martin Ray buys Paul Masson, kind of a drastic career shift. He was a stockbroker, Martin Ray, and then he becomes a winemaker at the absolute nadir of California wine history after Prohibition ends in the 1930s, 1936. In the negotiations that Paul and Martin have to buy and sell, Paul suggests to Martin, he says, you should abandon your idea of buying my place. Instead, you should go next door to the mountain to the north, a little bit higher up, and plant your own vineyard, make your own wine, do your own thing. Martin was in no way ready to do that in 1936. He was a stockbroker. He had no knowledge about wine production, but he never forgot that suggestion. So 6 years later, Martin Ray still owns Paul Masson. He sells it to Seagram's, the whiskey house from Canada.
Yes.
And he takes the proceeds from that sale and he does exactly what Paul suggested. He goes next door, buys the land on the mountain to the north, plants a Pinot Noir and Chardonnay vineyard, makes his first vintage in 1946, starts a winery in 1945, and makes estate bottled Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So, to further extend the history, Martin Ray makes some brilliant wines, some absolute horrible wines, but he makes a lot of wines. He makes small amounts, but he makes wines every year from his vineyards. And then in the 60s, he brings in partners. The partnership was cantankerous from the very get-go. And in the end, the partners in 1972, the partners take over the winery. They kind of excommunicate Martin, and they renamed the property Mount Eden Vineyards in 1972. This is our This is
50 years ago.
This is 2022.
Wow.
This is our 50th anniversary of being Mount Eden Vineyards. But the winery goes back even further, another 30 years before that. So yeah.
Well, and you entered when? Was it, what year did you start your intense involvement with it?
I got to Mount Eden in 1981, and I was very green. I had not made wine before in my life. I had a strong interest in wine, studied it, went to school at UC Berkeley, graduated in the mid-'70s, went back to school at UC Davis in the late 70s, early 80s, and got to Mount Eden in 81. They hired me as an assistant winemaker. And then at the end of 1982, I'd only been there 15 months, they hired me as the winemaker. And then I've been there ever since.
Well, they're lucky to have you. And I think you've gotten it right over the years. But let's talk about that progression. It's been a long time, and you figured it out, but where were the vineyards located? What were the varietals that you first had when you arrived on the scene?
So the original vineyards were about 25 acres. We now have about 40 acres. But they were these three significant French varieties: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon. Those were the ones that Martin Ray planted. Martin Ray kind of migrated into the Bordeaux world of Cabernet in the mid-1950s. And so when we took over the vineyard, those were the three stalwarts, and they still are. As you can see in this lineup, we still make the same three varieties. We haven't ventured off into
You haven't wavered into Malbec. You haven't gone into some other stuff.
No, we're not. We're more trying to perfect what we do. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And we've expanded the vineyards somewhat as we could, but the land that we live on and work on is very, very steep. So we have a huge amount of land, which is typical in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we have very few acres planted. We have about 300 acres of land at Mount Eden on this mountaintop, but only 40 are in vineyards because there isn't enough ground that's flat enough to farm.
And I think the steepness, as well as the other aspects of the terroir, is one of the main elements of the Santa Cruz Mountains AVA.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
The Santa Cruz Mountain AVA is unique in the world because it's based on elevation. It's not based on soil type. It's not based on political boundaries. It's not based on watershed. It's based on this specific mountain range, and you have to be above the fog. And if you're above the fog, you're in.
And you are, because the elevation of your vineyard is what, 2,000 or so?
The line varies around, because it's a massive appellation in terms of land mass, but it's very small in terms of vineyard acreage. But generally speaking, the boundary is between 500 to 800 feet. So if you're above that barrier, above the morning fog, then you're in the appellation.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you pride yourself as a grape grower, let alone a winemaker, but what's your philosophy or philosophies that help put all this wonderful wine into these beautiful bottles and for everyone to enjoy?
I've always told people, winemaking, is a fairly simple act. It's been practiced for thousands and thousands and thousands of years all over the world. It's not complicated, but if you want to make wines that are distinctive, long-lived, really fun, and especially long-lived, you got to pay a lot of attention to the details, and that really starts in the vineyard, ends in the winery, but taking a very simple process like fermentation and paying infinite attention to the details of it, that's kind of where I'm at.
You sound in all your practices, whether it be grape growing or the winemaking, very assiduous. It's something that's very necessary to get it right and to get the most out of your grapes.
I'm lucky as a winemaker because I work the same land every year. We don't change vineyard sources. We have our own vineyards. We have our estate vineyards, and they, produce every year, in various amounts. And so the raw material that I work with is consistent, and I know it very, very well. I've been doing it for 40 years.
You've been walking those slopes for a long time.
Yeah. A lot of winemakers, in the industry of wine, of California wine or wherever, there's lots of different wineries of different sizes and shapes, and the winemakers have to deal with varying sources of raw material, of vineyard sources every year, and that makes it much more challenging in a way because they don't know, they don't have control. I have ultimate control from pruning, cultivation, shoot thinning, spraying, harvest, everything. I have ultimate control over my vineyard sources, which makes my job a lot easier in a way because there's no one to blame but myself.
Well, it's a great advantage for you.
Yes.
Not only your familiarity with the grapes, the soils, etc., but you've walked those steep hillsides forever.
Yeah, I planted them.
Yeah.
I every vine at Mount Eden, with a couple exceptions, I planted myself.
Wow. Well, now we should give some attention to Domain Eden, which is obviously a more recent acquisition. Could you tell us about that?
So, in 2007, I'm driving myself to church on a Sunday morning, and in the back of this is in August. In the back of my mind, I'm kind of worried because we're doing this and that and this and that, and I was running out of room. I was seriously running out
at Mount Eden.
Running out of room at Mount Eden.
Yeah.
And I had just heard that a neighboring winery called Cinnabar, that was for sale, had just fallen out of escrow. Some guy came up to the winery to see the place, and he told me that, and he had just been to Cinnabar, and I asked him about it, and he said, no, they're still for sale. So this little light bulb came on in my head, and I went to church, and I raced home, and I talked to my wife, and I said, honey, we should buy Cinnabar. She said, that's a great idea. So I called, at that time, my chairman. He said, yeah. So then we called a neighbor who's a real estate broker. He said, yeah, I'll be your broker. And it all fell into place. Within 3 months, we closed escrow.
Wow.
Yeah, at the end of 2007. Wow. And it was great because a Cinnabar was built by the Mudd family, and it was a beautiful, beautiful winery. It doesn't have this. It's got a lot of vineyards that we farm and make wine from. We make a second series of wines called Domain Eden that are not being presented here, but the winery was just this turnkey winery that allowed me to move in the harvest of 2008, and poof, it was golden.
So did you relocate or refocus your production aspects to the Domain Eden facility?
Yeah, so the way we're organized now is all of our red grapes, Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon, all go to Domain for fermentation, because it has a beautiful fermentation room, with beautiful temperature-controlled tanks and clean and organized. Nice. All of our Chardonnay goes back to Mount Eden. All three of the main Chardonnay wines we make go back to Mount Eden in our cave that we built in '91. And then the upper cellar, which was below my home, is now relegated to the even year vintages of Cabernet Sauvignon, because Cabernet spends 2 years in the cellar. So we don't have quite enough space to do everything at Domain, so we kind of leapfrog back and forth. So we have 3 cellars, 3 cellars, and 2 wineries on 2-mile dirt roads.
A good combination. It sounds like it's working. Yeah. Well, can we talk about and maybe go through some of sure. the bottles that you sure. Brought, and you pick the order, Jeffrey. But I will say this: our viewers and listeners love to hear about the special characteristics of each wine. Yeah. And knock on wood, we can get some special maybe wine pairings recommendations from you. For food with food. So the first 2 wines are the estate Chardonnay Pinot Noir. So when you say estate bottle, it's important to realize what that means. That's a very strict labeling requirement that the government imposes. It means that you grow, age, ferment, age, bottle in one place. Nothing from another source. All in one place. Okay. That's called estate bottled. So these 2 wines are probably our most historic wines, the estate Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, because they go back to those first vintages of Martin Ray back in the 1940s. And I believe these are the longest lineage estate Chardonnay Pinot Noir outside of Burgundy, France. Wow. Pretty amazing. That is. Right in our backyard. The wines are... You should put a plaque up or something right there. I could. I've been saying it for a long time. But these 2 wines, they're very long-lived. They age 25, 30 years, no problem, in a good bottle cellar. They're made in a very conventional way. The Chardonnay is barrel fermented. The Pinot Noir is barrel and barrel aged. The Pinot Noir is tank fermented with whole clusters, meaning a percentage, about a third of the grapes are not crushed. They're just put in the tank whole, along with the grapes that are destemmed. They're all aged in relatively new French oak barrels. They tend to have more of a French style in that their fruitiness is a little more reticent. They're a little more what I call soil-based wines that age incredibly well. Good acidities, low pH, good tannins, the Chardonnay included, and they go well with food because the alcohols are like 13.5. They're not high alcohol. Low level, yeah. They're not high alcohol wines. They're grown on a windswept mountaintop, 14 miles from the ocean, cool climate, old vineyards, old budwood, old DNA of the vines is taken from Paul Masson back in the late 1890s, from France to his vineyard to Mount Eden. They're different. They don't taste like your modern California style, which is very ebullient, rich, fairly high alcohol. They're more subtle than that. They're I always say they're more soil-based than fruit-based. And that's an important distinction. That's the easiest, most succinct way I know of describing them, and they're very consistent. I mean, same vineyards, same guy making them every year, year after year after year. So there's a consistency of style. The style doesn't change. The vintages change, so there's a subtle difference within the context of the vintage. But the overall style of the wine is very consistent. Good. Well, that's good. Well, let's take a quick break here. I'm having a great conversation with Jeffrey Patterson of Mount Eden Vineyards and Domain Eden. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of these other beautiful wines and what's inside them and the bottles on the outside. And we're going to touch base with some other topics. He has got a special project called the Tanaka Project. We want to talk to him about the 2021 harvest, how it went, what things are looking like, and what's in his vision? What's he predicting for Mount Eden and Domain Eden in the next 5 years? We'll be right back.
thank you to the City of Monte Sereno for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Monte Sereno has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
We're back, and we have 2 more bottles with us here. Jeffrey, you want to take us through which ones in your order and give us?
So we'll do the Tanaka project first. Ron Tanaka was a Sacramento State English professor who befriended us in the 90s, in the early 1990s, and he kind of became our artist in residence, you might say. He loved to do art, various photography, poetry, paper cutouts, all kinds of different.
Very creative.
Yeah, very, very creative man. And he unfortunately committed suicide eventually, and it was a very sad time, and we've always kind of had Ron in the back of our minds because of his importance to us, and he did all this art and poetry that focused on Mount Eden. So to kind of celebrate his life, we decided to do this, which is something we've never done before. About 25% or $25, I think, maybe 25% of the sale price of the wine goes to suicide prevention.
Oh, great cause!
Here in Santa Clara Valley. And it's a small bottling. I select 3 barrels. I don't do it every year. I've done it now. I did it in 17. I did it in 19. I'll do it in 21 vintage. So every other year, basically. And it's about 75 cases. And it's 3 barrels that I like.
It's a Pinot.
It's a Pinot Noir from our state vineyards.
Okay.
And it... it kind of gives awareness to the cause, and it's a really nice wine. In addition, it's the regular Pinot Noir is an assemblage of all of our Pinot vineyards, which are about 5 in number, whereas this is only 1 vineyard. So it's rare in that respect. It's only a singular, the 3 barrels come from only 1 vineyard. The Cabernet Sauvignon is a Bordeaux blend. It has.
Tell our viewers and listeners, what do you mean by a Bordeaux blend?
So on the front label of the wine is what we call in French the cépage. So it's 80% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Merlot, 3% Cabernet Franc, and 2% Petit Verdot. So that's kind of what on the left bank of the river. In Bordeaux, that's called a left bank blend.
It's primarily Cabernet. That's why it's
primarily Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's why it has Cabernet on the label. But we make it. It's become probably our most sought after wine. It's unusual. There's in California, if you look at Cabernet Sauvignon production, there's only 2 wineries in the entire state of California, north to south, that grow this type of wine, estate bottled, Cabernet blend, or a Bordeaux blend, serious, ageable, long history of production, on the coastal mountain range at elevation 2, Mount Eden and Ridge.
Yeah.
And we're neighbors. We're not close neighbors, but we see each other. They're on the mountain to the north. I'm on the mountain to the south. So it's interesting. So this is a cool climate Cabernet. It has a lot of the kind of Bordeaux kind of characteristics of high aromatics, low alcohol, long-lived wine that Bordeaux wines are known for. So it stands out within the world of Cabernet, which is really kind of Napa focused. Everyone thinks of Cabernet in California as being the model is Napa Valley, This is not Napa Valley. This is on the opposite end of the spectrum. Lower alcohol, more high aromatics, just a whole different world. That's our Cabernet.
You're not succumbing to the what I'll call Robert Parker wine.
No.
The fruit bombs of the 80s and 90s.
No.
This is very traditional and classic.
We've never embraced Parker. For whatever reason, I'm kind of glad.
Well, Bob, if you're listening, you're a big guy. You can handle this. Well, so if it's a traditional Bordeaux,
yeah,
give me some classic food pairings that's really just going to make it sing here.
Cabernet, because it has a high level of tannin, I've always felt that the perfect marriage has a lot of animal fat. So red meats with a lot of fat typically work well because tannin and animal fat kind of have a nice synergy, on the palate. Yeah. So yeah, it's a red meat wine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other possibilities
with the Cabernet?
With the Cabernet.
Well, it depends on how early you drink it. I'm kind of a spoiled child. I drink them old.
Let them smooth out with some balance.
I drink them with risotto. I drink them with pasta dishes. I drink them with poultry. I don't drink them with fish, but I drink them with a wide variety of foods, typically. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but the best combination is with serious red meat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me go into another area because I'm getting way too hungry listening to you. Domain Eden kind of sort of made some history, and there's a connection between that winery, your wine that you made, and the royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Is that correct?
That's true.
Give us the backstory.
So about a week after that wedding occurred, there was an article published in the London Times, and the writer kind of chronicled the dishes for the wedding dinner. Before the wedding occurred, Harry and his wife said, "We're going to choose 2 wines for dinner, just 2. We're going to choose an Old World and a New World wine." They didn't say anything more than that. That's all they said. It was kind of an aside. It wasn't a big deal. So all these California wineries were kind of, vying for, is it us?
Yeah. Are we on the list? Yeah.
No one knew. And our importer, it was based in London, said, this is long after this all occurred, he said, yeah, we got this big order, like a 10-case order for your Domaine Pinot Noir to an address that didn't have any kind of, alarm to it. It was just
significance,
it was just an address somewhere in London. It wasn't, the Windsor, castle. And lo and behold, for the red wine, they chose our Domain Eden 2014 Pinot Noir.
Wow.
And for the white wine, it was a white Burgundy from Olivier Leflevre.
Wow.
Yeah, not a very fancy wine, but good, good. So yeah, it was a big publicity thing, and we had nothing to do with it. I mean, it was totally serendipitous.
This wasn't a secret mission by James Bond or anybody else to come up with getting this.
Sean Connery was not involved.
Or our current one, yeah. Well, that's great. Well,
or Daniel Craig.
Well, I do want to give a shout out to you because timing is everything. Thank you for being here today. But a few weeks ago, and you may have known about this, but the San Francisco Chronicle had the 2022 25 top best wineries in the Bay Area, Northern California, to visit, and you were in it, and you were only one of 2 in the Santa Cruz Mountain AVA. The Ridge was the other one. But hats off to you, and they were absolutely nailed it on the article. The stunning views, the stunning wine, the history with the winery, and they really liked just what you've already said today, the consistency and balance and making wines that last.
Yes.
They don't have a short shelf life, and
No.
they evolve, and evolution is good, and progression. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the most recent vintage, the 2021. Give us a brief summary of how did it go, any big surprises. No wildfires, thankfully, no smoke, but were there still challenges as there are in any harvest?
So the biggest challenge about 2021 was rain.
Okay.
So every year we have a rain log because we're dry farmed. All of our vineyards are dry farmed except for when they're planted. But after they're established, they're what we call dry farmed.
It's just whatever Mother Nature provides.
They're not irrigated. So we really worry about rain, every year. Usually not enough. And in 20 was a drought year. 21 was the most severe drought year we have ever. Our rain logs go back 70 years, and we've never had a rain year like 21 with so little. We had 14 inches of rain total. Normally we have 35. We had 14 inches. So I'm pulling my hair out thinking, what am I going to do? What's going to happen? I mean, are the grapes going to ripen? Do we have enough water to get them through this? And I was totally expecting a very, very small crop. And the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir yielded above normal.
You mean it in volume?
Yeah, totally surprised me. The Cabernet yielded way, way down, which was what I expected. But still, it was a very confusing result. But it was my primary concern in 21 was just the fact that we had so little water during the winter. This year is better. We're up to over 25 this year. But it was actually a nice vintage. The disease pressure was very low because it didn't rain during the spring. So the mildew pressure, which is always a concern, was very minimal. And the crop didn't ripen super early. It wasn't late, but it wasn't super early, which was what I was expecting. So it was actually a very good vintage. The wines in the barrel, they're all in the barrel now. Very concentrated, which is what you'd expect from a drought year. Very big wines, very forceful, emphatic. They taste good. I mean, I'm happy.
Will the Chardonnay be the first one to go into the bottle?
Yeah, so we typically will bottle Chardonnay in June of the previous vintage, Cabernet Sauvignon of the previous second, so it's 2 years old.
2 years back.
2 years old, so that'll be next in the month of July, and then in August before harvest we'll do the Pinot Noir, which will be the from the previous year's vintage. But yeah, 21. In talking to other winemakers about 21, I think everyone's pretty happy, and I think everyone's surprised it's as good as it is. And on top of that, in 20 we had all these forest fires, and a lot of wineries in the Santa Cruz Mountains that were more closer to the fires in Ben Lomond and Boulder Creek. They didn't make any wine.
They couldn't do anything. They couldn't even.
They didn't even pick the grapes. So we were lucky. We kind of skirted that problem in 20. So there was no forest fire pressure, which was great. That was a big relief. Yeah, but yeah, 21 I think is surprisingly good. I mean, given the fact that it was such a severe drought, the wines are pretty strong.
Well, you sound pleased with the early returns. Let's put it that way.
So far, so good.
Well,
yeah.
Good. Well, tell our viewers and listeners what's the best way to get hold of your lovely wines. Is it go to the winery, go on get in a wine club with you, go online, go to a store, obviously, whether it's big.
Yeah.
Small or medium? What are all the platforms that are best for you?
So the best serious wine store that our wines are at is called K&L. They're in Redwood City.
Okay.
Outside of that, there are not that many stores left. So the kind of more gourmet markets that carry our wines are Lenardi's and Draeger's.
Okay.
A little bit of wine is sold at Safeway. It's not a wine that we have on the table here, but it's a Chardonnay we make from Edna Valley. That's at Safeway. And then the easiest, most convenient is just to go online and order from our website.
Okay.
Yeah. And we do quite a bit of business there.
And when you order and get the bottles from your own winery, they haven't been transported
No.
in a truck.
No.
They haven't been exposed to
No.
sunlight or artificial light.
No,
or
they come right from
temperature,
our
so
library.
It's going to be, knock on wood, in perfect condition.
It should be.
Good.
It should be, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Last area question. What's the vision, hope, expectation, whatever, of where Mount Eden and Domain Eden are going to be in 5 years? What do you anticipate? What do you want to happen, including your own involvement?
So my two children, my daughter's 37 and my son just turned 30. So my son is involved in wine, in kind of the general managership of the production side of the company, and my daughter is involved in sales and marketing of the company, and they seem to be happy. They're working full time. So, over the next 5 years, I'll slowly step away. I'll be there to help, but I won't be necessarily responsible for everything I've been responsible for the last 40 years. So that's my vision, and I am hoping that everything goes well and they continue to be happy and satisfied. And I mean, it's a good family business.
We'll have you back in 5 years,
All
if
right.
not earlier, to find out how it's going. What your
Okay.
predictions have
I
come
love
true.
it.
Well, Jeffrey Patterson, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
It's
Bill.
been an absolute pleasure. And talking all about all this wine, looking at it, I think I'm going to go home and open a bottle tonight.
All right.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you.
Likewise.